Today is the 2028 NBA Draft, another year where we get to see so many prospects who we have followed throughout the year and get to see where they end up, a couple of whom maybe will end up on our Golden State Warriors. So last episode, we recapped the season. We had an incredible NBA Finals going 7 games. But for those who missed it, the Brooklyn Nets, off of a step-back 30-foot three in overtime by Devin Booker with seconds left, won the game. This team won 61 games. They won more than anybody in the NBA this year, so it wasn't entirely a surprise. But for an older team whose two oldest players are above the age of 30 and have never won a title, it was pretty cool to see them win the whole thing. We also had the draft lottery, in which the Montreal Huskies, the NBA's worst team last year, going 13-69. Nice. Ended up with the number 1 pick in the draft. I kind of view this as a 6-player class, and it's kind of fitting that the Brooklyn Nets, who just won the title, had the 6th overall pick. I think you've got 6 guys in this class who in most seasons would be in contention for the number 1 pick. I think this is the most talented crop at the top that we've seen in this series so far, and I think there's a really talented group of players below them who will have a chance of potentially going to the Warriors as we pick number 20 in the first round. We don't really have a lot of trade flexibility. We still have the Sixers and Clippers swap pick next year, which I think is a really good asset. And then we have 5 contracts that we can currently move, but we can't trade our additional first round picks. I mean, I guess we could swap them, but we can't trade them. And we don't have any additional firsts. We don't have any second rounders whatsoever. So our trade flexibility is limited outside of the Clippers and Sixers pick. As always, the draft class is available to download if you would like to do so. This is how you download the scenario. Type in my PSN and you can find any of the previous offseason scenarios of the series. Obviously, since this is the year 4 offseason, if you want this draft class specifically, this is the one you would download. And it brings you to where we started in the last episode, the conference finals. From there, you'll notice this is where the draft class is. So you can continue in this scenario, or you can save the draft class on your own, and then you can put it into your pre-existing MyNBA save file. So that's how you do it for this draft class, along with all of the other classes we've had in this series so far. Let's now talk some trades. I always like to cook up some big moves before the draft, and there are going to be quite a few this year, so buckle up. The Knicks were one of the worst teams in the NBA this year, although Jalen Brunson is still really damn good. He is on the move to the 76ers for 4 future first-round picks, none this year. The Sixers have the number 2 pick in this draft. They will keep that, but the Knicks will get 4 future picks for Jalen Brunson, who obviously won a title with them in Season 1. He hit a game-winning 3 of his own, just like Devin Booker did in the last episode. So 4 ones along with Hamadi Adebawale and a future second will get it done. The Knicks only had the 32nd pick in this year's draft, given that they swap picks with the Nets in the Mikal Bridges trade. So the Nets are picking 6th because of that, while the Knicks are picking last because the Nets had the best record in the NBA. The Sixers all of a sudden have a pretty nice team. They've gotten a little bit better over the last couple of years. They're going to be adding the number 2 pick in the fold, which they were able to keep. This is a nice core. I think this could be a playoff team next year in the East, and they keep at least 1 first-round pick every year moving forward. The Knicks are not done, though. They are completely selling the farm. Jaren Jackson is on the move to the Houston Rockets. The Knicks figure they might as well tear it down. This was one of the worst teams in the league last year. They've got to start a rebuild. Jackson's a very good defensive player, and the Rockets are looking to add more defense in the front court, given that Alperen Şengün is more of an offensive guy. Tari Eason will be coming back to the Knicks, although this is more of salary filler. Eason's a very solid player in his own right, along with 2 first-round picks, including number 29 this year, and 3 second-rounders. So the Rockets add to their roster. They upgrade from Tari Eason to Jaren Jackson. They felt like they needed to make a move. This is a good team, the number 2 seed last year, but they didn't make it out of the first round. The Knicks roster, meanwhile, is pretty terrible. They do have 2 ones now, granted nothing until pick 29, but they've been able to stack up on some future picks. So they figure they might as well package some of these picks to move up the board a little bit. The 29th pick and 2 future ones are going to get pick 8 from Atlanta. The Hawks are in a very similar spot as, to say, the Rockets a few years ago. They have a lot of young lottery picks on their team. They don't really have that star, but they've got a good young nucleus who just made the playoffs this year. They don't need to keep picking in the lottery, so they might as well add some future picks, gives them some trade assets to go and get a star later. Now all of a sudden the Knicks have a top 10 pick. Atlanta still has 2 number ones this year. They have 3 first rounders in 2030 as well. Speaking of Atlanta, the guy who they let go of a few years ago, Trae Young, is on the move from Dallas to the Jazz. Ever since Luka left in free agency, this Mavericks team has been stuck in the middle. They signed Trae Young. They tried to make it work with Kyrie Irving, but this team is extremely mediocre, and it's just not really going to work. So Trae Young will be on his 4th team in 5 years. He's going to the Jazz, who, much like Atlanta, have been stacking up on young players, but they don't really have that star yet. The Jazz were great for most of this year. At the trade deadline, they were like the 3 or 4 seed, but they completely fell apart. Bryce Sensabaugh, 3 first rounders in 2 seconds will get the job done. I think Jalen Brunson's a little bit better, which is why he's going to get 4 firsts. Although I think the picks that Dallas is getting here are better than the ones the Knicks got, including the 12th overall pick from Utah. So Dallas now has 3 firsts this year. They have 2 next year. And all of a sudden, they can really start this rebuild. The Jazz, meanwhile, become real players in the West. Their inexperience killed them down the stretch. But now you add Trae Young, who's 29 years old. He can be a mentor for the number 1 pick, Samuel Queen. And I think the pieces in Utah fit a little bit better than they did previously. All right, perhaps the biggest one of the day, Donovan Mitchell is on the move to the Lakers in a 3-team deal that also involves the Indiana Pacers. This is a home run for the Lakers. They're really not trading that much away, and they're getting a stud, obviously, in Donovan Mitchell. The Evan Mobley trade didn't really work for Cleveland in the sense that nothing really changed, so they figure they've got to go full rebuild. The Cavs made the finals 2 years ago, but it was clearly a fraudulent run. They were 500 at best that year, and the Eastern Conference was really weak. So Cameron Tylick is headed back to Cleveland along with 2 1s and 2 2s. Devin Vassell, meanwhile, is going to Indiana for Pascal Siakam, who's headed back to Cleveland, and 3 additional first-round picks. So why are the Pacers doing this? Well, Devin Vassell's a great role player who kind of fills a need for Indy. While the Pascal Siakam contract looks pretty horrible, he's gotten worse and worse each year. He's going to be under contract for another 4 seasons. And for a team like Indiana with clear title aspirations, they just won 59 games, this is the type of guy who can really handcuff them. They're able to get out of this deal, and yes, they have to trade 3 first-rounders, but 2 of them are late this year. They don't need those first-round picks here because they've got this group established already. They're only giving up 1 additional first-rounder after this year. 2 picks in the 20s is not going to help this team because they already have their rotation pretty much set for the next few seasons. Devin Vassell is better than Pascal Siakam, and they can do without these picks, in my opinion. Getting out of the Siakam deal is a huge win. The Lakers get Donovan Mitchell at a discounted price, and the Cavs get a good young player in Cameron Tylick. They get a project in Pascal Siakam, and they add 5 first-round picks as a result of this deal. This roster is really, really confusing, though, but they have 5 first-round picks this year. They don't need 5, though, as fun as it would be. So I would imagine they're going to package some of these picks maybe to look to move up later. Hint, hint. But for now, they have 5 picks in the first round, 4 of which are outside of the lottery, though. So they're going to use some of these picks with the Knicks, who just got pick 8 from Atlanta. But the Knicks kind of need all the picks they can get this year. So picks 14, I'm pretty sure that's 22, and 31 are going to the Knicks for pick 8. So all in all, the Knicks trade a few future first-round picks to get pick 8, which they used to get some more picks this year. Cleveland is now picking inside the top 10. They still hold 2 additional first-rounders this year. And the Knicks, meanwhile, now have 4 picks in the first round. Well, they're still not done. We've got a 3-team deal, the Lakers, Magic, and New York. So Mark Williams is going to Orlando. It gives them a really good rim protector. The Magic overperformed this year, and I think it makes sense to potentially look to make a swing. I want to see them add a real third scorer. That's not necessarily Mark Williams, but he is an upgrade to what they have currently over Ivica Zubac. And the Lakers are doing this so they can save a little bit of money. Make sure they re-sign Zion Williamson, and they can get set with their new big 3 of Zion, Donovan Mitchell, and Shavonte Fitzgerald. Ivica Zubac is a lot cheaper, and he's not that much worse. The Lakers are still getting a quality starting center here. There's a third part to this deal to make the salaries work for Atlanta. Jaime Jaquez is going to the Knicks. I don't know why he's 3.5 stars. He really shouldn't be. He's not that good. This is more so just as a salary filler, and the Knicks are a team who can take on salary, and they figure, why not add another project player, such as Jaime Jaquez Jr.? The Lakers will be getting 3 second-rounders, I believe all of which are this year. The Magic will be getting a second-rounder from New York, and New York will be getting a second-rounder from Orlando, while Kyle Filipowski is also headed to the Magic. Gives them a little bit of depth behind Mark Williams. They don't really have a backup 5 right now, so this ensures the center rotation for Orlando. The Lakers get cheaper, and the Knicks take a shot on a guy in Jaime Jaquez without really having to give up that much in return. So I think this deal makes sense for all 3 teams, for what they need right now, for where they're currently at. All 3 sides would accept. And I think this Orlando team, as I said, is going to be a big threat to potentially make some moves in the future. Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner have quietly developed nicely with each other. Anthony Black had a career year. Carson Young was really good in his 3rd season. I still think this team has the ammo to potentially go out and get a guy, but if not, they have a really good 7-man rotation right now. Jalen Carrington as well. He didn't have a very good rookie year, but he's a guy who they certainly believe in long term. So an interesting group of trades around the league. We saw some picks change hands. Jalen Brunson to the 76ers, Donovan Mitchell to the Lakers, and Trae Young to the Utah Jazz headlined our moves. I feel like there were more teams looking for stars this year than teams willing to trade away stars. Indiana now has flexibility getting rid of Siakam. I wouldn't rule out the Nets even though they just won a title. Orlando, as I said, I think would like to add a star. Detroit really only has one in Cade Cunningham. Ron Holland is kind of developing into that second guy, but I think he's more of the 3rd scorer on a championship team. And really, other than Jokic and Giannis, there weren't many good choices out there, and both of those guys just re-signed last year. I think their respective teams would like to hold on to them. Note, however, there were no picks in the top 6 that changed hands, not even the defending champion Brooklyn Nets. Those top picks are sacred because the guys at the top of this class are really, really good. I think there's a bigger difference between picks 6 and 7 in terms of value than 1 and 6, which is pretty crazy, but some classes are just a little bit different than others, and ultimately that's how this year's sets up. So with that, we'll get rocking and rolling. The 2028 NBA Draft is now open. The Warriors only sitting with 1 pick currently, number 20 in the 1st round. Remember, we did not have a pick last year in the 1st round, so I'm excited to potentially add a high-end prospect to our team. As I said, it's a 6-player class at the top, and it's worth noting that none of the teams picking in the top 6 even thought about giving off their picks. Not even Brooklyn, who just won the title and has a potentially short title window. CeCe Cunningham, the big man out of Miami, the heavy favorite to be the number 1 pick to the Montreal Huskies, but we've seen surprises in the past. Utah last year with Samuel Queen, Utah in season 1 with Martin Sifa. I guess there's a common denominator there, that being Utah, but you never know. So with the first pick in the 2028 NBA Draft, the Montreal Huskies select CeCe Cunningham from the University of Miami. The expected is the reality, and it's got to say something for Cunningham that this is a loaded group at the top, yet it always felt like he was going to be the number 1 pick. 6'11", 240, really good defensive prospect. He's a good rim protector, and he's got the athleticism to switch onto smaller players. I think his shooting touch at his size and at 19 years old is really impressive. I think he needs to improve his touch around the basket a little bit, especially on post-ups and fadeaways, but if he can do that, I think you're looking at a really, really good player who the Huskies look to build their team around moving forward. The 76ers at number 2 is a fascinating spot because throughout the pre-draft process, they have been mocked Braxton Lee Carter, the point guard of LSU, but they just traded for Jalen Brunson. Now, you're supposed to pick value over fit and need, so we'll see what they do. Ultimately, the Sixers pick a point guard, but not Braxton Lee Carter. Instead, it's Arvon Jackson out of Marquette. This one's a surprise, but he's a really good player. I understand why they like him. A talented guard who I think will be able to play off of Jalen Brunson. He'll be able to lead the offense off the bench if needed. And this is the Sixers picking who they believe is the best player on the board rather than worrying about fit. Jared McCain's a free agent at the end of this season anyway, so there's a chance he might not even be back, and if that's the case, Jackson can move over to the 2. A really well-rounded prospect who I think has the athletic traits to really progress in every area, and he doesn't really hold a major weakness currently, which I think is why the Sixers really like him. That'll bring up the other recent expansion team, the Seattle Sonics, who with the 3rd overall pick, select Rakai Stewart from Texas Tech. I think of the two expansion teams, the Sonics are in a much better place right now than the Huskies, even with Montreal winning the draft lottery. The Sonics are younger, cheaper, and better, and I think Rikai Stewart fits this team really well. He's the modern NBA wing. At 6'8", he's a 3-level scorer. He can create his own shot, but he can be effective without the ball as well. I think he's going to be one of the team's better defensive players right away, but he's got to get a little bit stronger. He can't really match up with bigs. He struggles down low getting rebounds, but I think he'll pair nicely with their first-rounder last year, Desante Crawford, who averaged 13 a game. In our first surprise of the day, we've got a trade. The Wizards are moving out of the 4th pick, and it's the Charlotte Hornets, who will not be trading away pick 7, are moving up. Scoot Henderson and a top 5 protected first in 2030 are headed to the Wizards for pick 4. I don't think this is great value for Washington, but I see why they're doing this. This is the 5th straight year they've picked in the top 4. This team has had no direction. They've added a lot of young players, but they are just a miserable team. And by adding Scoot Henderson, you're getting a reliable, talented young player who you can build around and increases the team's floor dramatically. Adding another rookie doesn't change much for the Wizards. As for the Charlotte Hornets, I think this is good value. You now have 2 picks in the top 7, and they select Braxton Lee Carter, the point guard out of LSU, who I assume not many people expected would be on the board past number 3. 6'6", 205. I think he's the modern NBA point guard with his combination of size, scoring ability, and his feel for the game as a passer and what he can provide defensively. Really good three-point shooter, really solid playmaker. He's got super long arms. I think this is a home run trade for Charlotte because I don't think he's that much worse than Scoot Henderson. I think he has a chance to be better by year 3. And he's cheaper. You have him on the rookie contract. I don't love losing the top 5 protected 2030 pick. There's a chance this team isn't good by then. But I think it's worth the risk. At number 5, we've got another surprise. The Phoenix Suns are also moving out of this pick. And it's the Charlotte Hornets who are trading up again. Back-to-back spots. The Hornets are going to trade pick 7 and Isaiah Jackson. This is an A-plus deal for Charlotte, who felt like they got screwed by the draft lottery because they were right outside the top 6, and that's the sweet spot in this draft. They end up with 2 top 6 picks, and they don't have to give up that much to move here to number 5. The Suns have fallen in love with a draft prospect who is not amongst the top 6 in this class. They know he's going to fall to 7, and so they figure they'll take on Isaiah Jackson, who's a pretty good player, while the Hornets pick Carson Adiakale from Indiana State. Small school kid, but don't get it twisted. This kid's really good. NBA level body immediately at 6'8", 215 pounds. They are forming one of the most exciting and dynamic long-term backcourts with him and Braxton Lee Carter. I think the two of those guys are going to play off each other really well. They have very different skill sets. They're both big. They're both long. They're both athletic. And not to mention Shaedon Sharpe is here as well. So it's going to be a little crowded early on. I guess Sharpe might not be a big piece of the future, or maybe they see him as the 6th man long term. Adiakale can shoot the 3 ball. He's got pretty good feel as a playmaker. He's a pretty good defender with room to grow, and the athleticism is really the calling card for him. He decided to go an untraditional route, go to Indiana State, where he really played well in the Missouri Valley, and he has earned the opportunity to be a top 5 pick. So the Nets here at number 6, they will not be trading out. The Hornets are not going to move up again. Marlon Boston is the last of the big 6. So you would think this is a pretty obvious choice here for Brooklyn at this spot. No, they're going to pick Marcus Evans out of St. John's. Evans was my number 1 target in this class at number 20. I didn't think he was going to make it. I thought he would not be picked this early. I was expecting more like between 10 and 14. But to be honest, I am fully on board with this pick for the Nets. I think he's the best catch-and-shoot guy in the draft. And for a team who doesn't need a star with this pick, but rather a role player who can impact winning, I think Marcus Evans can do that more right away than a guy like Marlon Boston. Excellent catch-and-shoot guy, pretty solid defensively. He's not a guy who really commands the ball. He's an off-ball player and a perfect fit in this Devin Booker, Cam Thomas-led offense. So I think this is a home run fit. And I have no problem with the Nets reaching down the board a little bit for a guy in Evans who is an awesome fit for them at this spot. So Phoenix at number 7 was not expecting Marlon Boston to be here, but they already have a guy they fell in love with. That player is Matthias Franklin out of North Carolina, and he will still be the pick. If you love your guy, that's one thing. But the Suns had the 10th pick, and I think he would have been on the board. He's a small 6 foot, 180-pound guard who will be turning 24 years old before his NBA debut. I don't think you had to worry about him making it to number 10. The Suns are all in on this kid, though, and after his NCAA tournament run, it's easy to see why. He led the 7th-seeded North Carolina Tar Heels to a national championship, scoring 31 points against the juggernaut, top-seeded Kentucky team in the national championship. I think this is going to be a good player at the next level, but I don't think they needed to pick him at number 7. And passing on a guy like Carson Adiakale at number 5 really could come back to bite them. So Cleveland's got to be jumping for joy. Who would have thought Marlon Boston would be on the board at 8? The Sonics tried to trade up for him. It didn't work. And the Cavs picked Jamario Mooney from Vanderbilt. Fascinating. Okay, so something clearly is going on with Marlon Boston. He's now slipped 3 spots later than expected. Mooney's an intriguing senior big for Vanderbilt who had a really good season for them. I don't really see what he does well, though, in the NBA. He doesn't really have many translatable offensive skills. He's a good but not great defensive prospect. He was mocked to us at number 20, and I thought that was too early. But Cleveland picks him all the way up at number 8, and they traded up for this spot from number 14 earlier today. I feel like they didn't really need to do that. So Marlon Boston is still on the board here at number 9. This is certainly a fascinating development because he was supposed to be gone by 6. Brooklyn, I understood. They really like Marcus Evans as a fit. The Suns fell in love with Matthias Franklin. I disagree with it, but fair enough. But the Cavs passing on him suggests there's some red flags. The Nuggets are going to pass on him as well. They pick Malcolm Dumas out of Houston. So Boston now falls out of the top 9. There's got to be an issue with him. Is it character? Is it medical? What is going on? Regarding him aside, I do think this is a pretty good pick, though, for Denver. I'm a little surprised Dumas went in the top 10, but value-wise, I don't really have a problem with it at all. He reminds me a lot of his father, Chance Dumas, in the sense that both guys are violent, going to the basket, and will attack the rim. Really good defensive player. I don't think he's as versatile as his father was coming out. I don't think he's quite as strong and physical. I do think he's a little bit better as a three-point shooter than his dad was coming out. If that area of Dumas' game can develop, I think you're looking at a really, really good player. The Suns already passed on Boston once. I don't think they're going to pick him here. If they would have picked him, it would have been at number 7. And sure enough, they don't. Kylan Gubnang Jr. from Kentucky is the selection. So Boston falls out of the top 10. I think this is a really good pick, though, for the Suns. The National Player of the Year had a phenomenal season for Kentucky. They were the best team in the country, made it to the national championship, but lost to Matthias Franklin, his new teammate here in Phoenix. The Suns have a very clear theme in terms of how they're building their team. They're looking for winners. Last year in the top 10, they picked Shaquille Hunter, the tournament MVP. This year in the top 10, they picked Matthias Franklin, the tournament MVP, and Kylan Gubnang Jr., who led his team to the national title. The Suns clearly have a pattern in terms of players who they want, and they're building their team their own way, which, if anything, I kind of respect. Even if they're reaching down the board a little bit, they have the theme, they have the guys they like, and they have a clear plan of attack on how they want to build their basketball team, and I think it's commendable. Will Boston be the pick at number 11 to the Miami Heat? No. They pick Calvin Keckbauer out of Marquette. I've got to think Boston goes to one of these next few teams. The Mavericks, Thunder, and Knicks all are not afraid of taking risks. Looking at Keckbauer, though, he's the second Marquette guard off the board, along with Arvon Jackson, who went second overall. Keckbauer was recruited to Marquette with Kajai Stokes. And although Stokes had the better freshman year, it was Keckbauer who was regarded as the higher high school prospect. It took him a little while to develop, but he's turned into a nice player. An all-around two-way guard who I think will be a good pro at the next level. He ends up getting drafted earlier than Kajai Stokes, who was the 19th pick. After the top 6, the theme of this class is the upperclassmen, and we've seen a bunch go off the board since pick 6. At number 12, the Dallas Mavericks select Marlon Boston from Rutgers. The fall for Boston comes to a close. So why did he fall all the way to number 12? It's one thing to not go number 6 to the Nets. It was one thing that the Suns really liked Matthias Franklin. But after the Cavs passed on him at number 8, I figured there's something up. Teams are clearly scared off by Marlon Boston. Reports say at the NBA Combine he did not interview well across the league, coming off as a selfish, bad teammate. The Mavericks are going to take the opportunity, though, to pick for value. Their sources say that they loved their interview with Boston and that he seemed like a great kid, good heart, good work ethic, and fits what they're trying to build in Dallas. There's not going to be a ton of pressure for him to perform right away. They're starting a new rebuild, so I think this is a good landing spot. The Thunder at number 13 select Isaiah Hamilton out of UCLA. They would have been all over Boston, I think, if he fell to this spot. But they're going to pivot to Hamilton instead, a talented 6'6" guard from UCLA who I don't think is really all that impressive on the ball in the half court. I think he's at his best offensively in transition, has shown some occasional shot-making flashes, as you can see here. But I think more of his calling card comes on the defensive end of the floor. The Thunder were very inconsistent at times defensively this season, and they did not do a very good job of defending the perimeter in the first round of the playoffs against Golden State. I think this team's going to shake things up at some point this offseason. I think one of Chet Holmgren or Jalen Williams is probably going to be traded because they have failed to make it out of the second round except for once in this series. The New York Knicks at number 14, the first of their 4 first-rounders, and they select Silvambo Milambo from the Congo, their first selection of this new era. He was a guy who was totally on my radar at pick 20. He wasn't the number 1 guy on my list, but he was pretty high, and I would have been happy to pick him at that spot. When you see a 7'2", 260-pound international big man, you probably think this is a raw, super athletic player who needs some fine-tuning to his game. Not quite. He is pretty athletic, but his calling card's his offense. I mean, he can score, he can shoot the ball. He's not a great defender, but I think that can be taught with his size and frame. What you cannot teach is a feel for the game offensively for a guy who's this inexperienced. I think the ceiling with him is really high, and I think he could easily end up as a top 10 player in this class. I think teams were a little bit scared off because he's a little bit unconventional as a prospect, but the Knicks, with 4 first-round picks, can certainly afford to take the risk at this time. The Toronto Raptors at number 15 select Kobe Cabiner from Syracuse, the first of the 2 Syracuse guards off the board. Their other guard, Malik Tariq, was projected ahead of him, 6'4", 6'11" wingspan. I always felt like Cabiner was the better prospect, and I think Toronto's getting it right, that he's their guy in this spot. He has on- and off-ball versatility, inconsistent as a scorer. Some nights he put up 23 on good efficiency. Other nights he looked lost, 2 for 10 from 3, tunnel vision as a shooter, trying to break out of the slump and shot his team out of games. So the consistency's got to be worked on, but I think the talent with this young man is certainly there. Final pick of the lottery, number 16, the Sacramento Kings select Demarion Castle out of USC. He's an undersized big who I think protects the rim really well defensively. This is someone who has really solid lateral mobility. He can move around the paint quickly and get contests on shots. He's a good floor spacer. He can shoot the 3-ball. The Kings are really prioritizing bigs who can shoot. That's why they traded for Lauri Markkanen. That's why they drafted Caden Howard 2 years ago. They want a team of guys who can space the floor for their lead ball handlers, such as Dennis Gordon, who I think is going to make the leap into being a regular all-star starting next season. The Warriors are on the bar. We're almost up. We're a few picks away, and I think the board is played out fairly well. There's a number of guys who I would be happy with at number 20. There's still 6 or 7 guys who we invited for pre-draft workouts, so a number of guys on the board who we're still familiar with. However, there is one player on the board in particular who I'm very fond of, and I do not think he will make it to 20. I think he's going to be one of the very next players gone. There are some surprises in terms of players who are on the board still. Deo De Seville was looked at as a top 10 pick. Quinn Sims from North Carolina, highly regarded recruit, played really well for them in the tournament. It could easily be one of those guys or one of the players who we had in for a workout. So we're going to see if we can get this pick via trade. They would do it for Dillon Brooks straight up. That would not be fair value. This would not be fair for us. I'm not trading Jabari Springer. This trade seems a little bit more reasonable, but I'd rather hold on to Leonard Miller. I want to see what I can do with these 2 second-rounders, and I think this first trade actually makes a lot of sense. This one does not. We're not trading Springer, and I'd rather not trade Leonard Miller. I think this deal would really work. We're going to move up from 20 to 17, and then we're going to trade away Dillon Brooks for 3 second-rounders. So for us, we're getting our guy here at this spot. I don't think he's going to make it to number 20, and we're adding some second-rounders. We're going to get 2 additional picks today. The Blazers don't need these seconds. They don't need to fill out their roster. They could use a little bit more defense on the perimeter, and they could use a veteran. Mikal Bridges and Lonzo Ball are not enforcer types. Malik Beasley's a talker, but I don't think he's going to be back next year. They need a guy in Dillon Brooks who can sort of lead these young guys, because Portland has a really good group, but they underperformed last year because they didn't have enough veterans. Dillon Brooks gives them what they need, and we, meanwhile, have 3 more picks today. So the Warriors are on the clock here at pick 17. Who is the guy we're trading up for? I figure I might as well look at some of these offers. There wasn't anything that I found overly enticing or realistic. If this was real-life Jalen Johnson, it would be a different story. Biasly, I would love Ochai Agbaji, but that's not really worth it. I don't see why the Heat would do that with Calvin Keckbauer. The most interesting deals were the ones where we would get 2 first-round picks back, because that would give us a lot of future flexibility. We could get Isaiah Jackson. That's kind of funny. But there's a guy I really like who I think is going to help this team out right away. And for a team who has championship aspirations, I want a guy who can contribute immediately. So who is the player we are moving up for? Well, there's quite a few candidates in terms of who this could be. In terms of the guys projected to go way earlier, who I didn't think had a chance at falling at 20, there's Deo De Seville and Quinn Sims. I didn't invite them for pre-draft workouts because I didn't think there was any chance we would get them. De Seville's the Big East Player of the Year, versatile defender, dominant scorer. And then Quinn Sims, high upside player who has a lot to work on, but he has good feel as a playmaker at 6'9". There's Silos Royal, the number 1 recruit in this year's high school class, had an underwhelming freshman year at Louisville. Another good playmaker, though, who I think is quite talented. Malik Tariq, an athletic freak from Syracuse who's raw. There's Waylon Wayans from Oklahoma. I like him. Kemp Lionheart, 23 years old, dominant interior player, very athletic. Ramon Hodge, really good 3-and-D guy. I think he's the modern NBA role player. Jamie Velarde is a bucket off the bench. Can create his own shot, but he's got more to his game than just the scoring. So who will it be at this spot? With the 17th pick in the 2028 NBA Draft, the Golden State Warriors select Ramon Hodge from Michigan State University. This was the apple of my eye. Coming into the day, he was the number 2 guy on my list at this pick, only behind Marcus Evans, who went number 6 overall. We never had a chance at landing him. Hodge comes in as a 77 overall. I think it's not going to take him too long to find his way in the rotation. This is a high-level role player who impacts winning. Very good defender, streaky shooter, but he can get hot, and I like his feel for the game as a playmaker. He primarily plays off the ball. He's not going to need the ball in his hands to be a successful player. Smooth, lefty stroke. It's an effortless shot that looks really nice. He's an impressive athlete who can get to the hole. He's fast, he's quick, he can jump high, he's tough, he's physical, and he's the type of kid who we want to bet on. As I said, I think he's a really good defender. I think that's his calling card. He's a very good perimeter defender. I want to see him get stronger, though. He's really skinny. He doesn't really match up with bigs very well. But I think right now, he's going to be at his best on both ends of the floor beyond the three-point line. He's at his best on offense shooting the three, and he's on his best defensively guarding beyond the perimeter. So right now, in the half court, he's a traditional perimeter player with the goal eventually getting him to bulk up and be more of a combo forward rather than just a wing. Nonetheless, I like his skill set. I think he's going to be in the rotation pretty early on. If the shooting can be more consistent, I think we're looking at a potential top 10 player in this class. I really, really like his game, and I think you guys are going to enjoy having him on the roster. I think he's going to be a good bench piece for us, who maybe could be more down the line. I think he's a high floor, high ceiling pick. Silos Royal will not have to wait too much longer to hear his name. He goes number 18 to the Bucks. The number 1 recruit in this high school class did not have a very good season at Louisville. But he's one of those guys who's just going to be a better pro than college player because he has a 78 overall. The Bucks are going to take the risk, and it looks like the gamble will pay off. I think he's a good defender. I think he's a good scorer inside the arc. Really struggled beyond the three-point line this year. That was a big surprise for evaluators who liked his shot coming out of high school, but it just did not fall at all in college. We've got another trade at number 19. The Knicks will be acquiring this pick from Atlanta for Nikola Jovic. These two teams made a deal earlier today, and they're not done. The Hawks, as I said, they don't really have need for first-round picks. They need to add veterans. Nikola Jovic is a solid rotation player, while the Knicks don't need veterans. They need young guys. So with the 19th pick, the New York Knicks will select Terrence Reed from Memphis. A 4-year player at Memphis. Reed is already 24 years old, but he's a guy who can shoot the three ball well. He plays good defense. I kind of wanted to see him on a contender. Instead, he's on the worst team in the league, but he's a guy who I think is going to raise the floor a little bit for this team. They want guys who can contribute right away while taking gambles on other picks like we saw earlier with Silvano Malombo. Quinn Sims to Portland at number 20. If Ramon Hodge was not on the board for us and we stayed at number 20, I would have picked Quinn Sims, which is a little bit of a gamble. We did not have him in for a pre-draft workout, but that's because I thought he was a lock to go in the lottery. Sims is not very good defensively, though, but I like his game offensively more than Hodge. Even if he's a worse three-point shooter, he's really good around the basket. He's a very efficient player. True shooting percentage was really high this year. The advanced metrics love him. The big difference between him and Hodge is the defense, and that's what I valued a little bit more at that spot, but I think that's a great pick for Portland, a team who already has really good defenders around him, and I think with his size and athleticism, he'll get better defensively. Deo Seville goes to the Knicks. Just because Jalen Brunson is gone does not mean the Villanova Knicks are dead quite yet. Very similar pick to their last one, given that De Seville is an established 4-year player, 22 years old, Big East Player of the Year. I thought he was going to go in the lottery. I think this is more around his range because he's kind of a jack of all trades. He doesn't have one specific skill that he's really good at, and I think that could be a problem. But I think if he develops, you're looking at a really solid role player who, again, contributes to winning. Jamie Velarde goes at number 22 to the Mavericks. I think this is a great pick. I think Dallas has had a great day. They got good value for Trae Young. They were able to land Marlon Boston at number 12. Who would have seen that coming? And then Jamie Velarde, who I think was a guy who they were really eyeing up at number 12. And had Boston not fallen, I think Velarde would have been their pick. This is a guy who primarily plays on the ball. He needs to be ball dominant. And luckily in Dallas, this isn't a team who's trying to win a lot of games next year. So he's going to be able to get his shots up. I think with his passing and defense, though, he's not a liability when he's not shooting the ball well. There are other aspects of his game that are going to be translatable here at the next level. Kemp Lionheart goes to Cleveland at number 23. He's a polarizing player, 23 years old, dominant around the basket. He's bigger and stronger than just about everybody in there. He's a really impressive athlete as well. He's one of the fastest players in this class at 240 pounds. The rest of his game is quite unpolished, though, which is a little bit odd given that he's a 4-year senior. I'm interested to see if they develop him. Winner Stiz out of UConn going to the Spurs. A team who's done a lot of winning adds the guy named Winner. He's a catch-and-shoot guy. Very simple projection. Reminds me a lot of Chance Palermo, who they drafted a few years ago, who's turned into a good player for them. Granted, we don't really like Chance Palermo around here, but that's not the point. The Magic at number 25 get Keontae Rivers out of Kansas. Rock chalk. Solid pick here for Orlando. Rivers is a guy who I think can score the ball from all three levels, although he was inconsistent at that at Kansas. Good perimeter defender. I think his projection is pretty simple. A guy who can defend and can score from multiple areas in the half court. Socrates Delgado goes to the Cavs at number 26. Of Cleveland's 3 picks, I think he's going to end up being the best player. I don't think that's much of a hot take because he is the highest rated of their 3 first-rounders. 6'6", really good size, really good length. I like what he provides defensively. I think Cleveland's had a really confusing draft, but I think he's going to end up being a good player. Orlando Robinson to the Mavericks with their 3rd first-rounder. A lot of teams have a lot of firsts. Cleveland with 3, Dallas with 3. The Knicks currently have 5, and they still have to make 2 more. Robinson is, I believe, the 3rd player off the board from that loaded Kentucky team who only lost 2 games this year prior to the national championship where they were upset by North Carolina, and they're going to have 3 or 4 more guys off the board in just a little bit. Hermann Fleuler from Germany goes to the Wolves. He was a top 10 pick coming into the year, but he's really undersized. 6'4" as a wing. I think he's a good playmaker, but he's not really a point guard. He's not big enough to be a wing, though, so he's kind of a tweener, but he's a really, really talented player. Minnesota's going to take the chance on him. Outside of size, if he was 6'7", he'd be a lottery pick, I think, without a doubt. The Hawks pick Malkazi Lazarshvili from the Republic of Georgia, a 7'3" big man. He's a little bit raw, but the Hawks don't need him to play right away. They've added some veterans. They've added some future picks. They've got their rotation pretty much set. He's a guy who's going to be able to develop in the wings. I don't think he's going to be a draft and stash guy, but probably someone who plays in the G League a lot. The Celtics select Kolai Jalushonis from Kentucky. I am really disappointed. I was convinced we were going to pick this guy. He was a major target of mine. 75 overall. He's a stud. He's the exact backup I wanted behind Evan Mobley because he's a terrific rim protector. Doesn't provide a whole lot offensively. He only averaged 2 points a game in around 16 minutes a night this year at Kentucky. But his skill set translates really nicely to the NBA. He's going to be a really, really good defender. And I figured since his stats just are not exciting at all, he's going to fall to the second round. There's no way as a GM you can sell your fan base on picking a 20-year-old who averaged 2 points per game in the first round. But clearly Boston, like us, did their homework on this kid. They watched the tape, and they see an NBA player with him. So I'm very disappointed we did not land him. Now, Hun Vu from Central Florida goes to the Knicks. They had the last 2 selections of the first round. Vu is a tiny guard, 6'2", only 170, but a crafty, dynamic scorer. The problem is that he is a traffic cone defensively, but the Knicks don't care. They're trying to develop young talent. Winning games is not the priority for them as they enter year 1 of the rebuild with Jaime Jaquez and Tari Eason as their best players. Waylon Wayans is the final pick here to the Knicks. I think of their 5 first-rounders, this might be their best one. 6'8", 230, NBA-level body, good scorer. Not a good defender yet, but I think with the size and athletic traits, he could get there one day. I'm surprised he's only a 71 overall. I think his skill set suggests that he's going to be a lot better than that early on. So that will wrap up the first round. I think things went pretty well for us. Ramon Hodge is a guy I really liked, and if we were going to make it out of the first round with him, I would have been really excited. There are some good players still on the board here in the second round, a couple guys who we gave pre-draft invites to, and we now have 2 picks in the second round, including the 4th pick in the round, so we're about to pick soon. CeCe Cunningham, of course, the number 1 pick. The other big storylines included the Hornets with a masterclass moving up twice to get Braxton Lee Carter and Carson Adiakale. After that, it was the fall of Marlon Boston, projected to go in the 5-6 range, makes it all the way to 12, where he goes to the Dallas Mavericks. Of course, we landed Ramon Hodge, who was one of my top targets in this class, but another guy I really, really wanted was Kolai Jaluchonis, and I was super confident we were going to get him. I figured there's no chance anyone's going to pick him in the top 40 picks. We're going to pick him. The entire league is going to be surprised. And then in 2 years from now, the entire league is going to be jealous that we had this guy on our team. I thought he could have been our Zay Logan of the series in the sense that he's a second rounder who turns into a really, really good player, but it's not to be. We still have some players we like, though, so I do plan on keeping these 2 second-rounders. Darius Montgomery, the 4th player from Kentucky off the board, maybe the 5th, I've lost count. He goes to the Huskies. The Hornets get Aiden Sarber out of Michigan, gets him some more depth at guard, and then the Orlando Magic select Chico Ramirez from New Mexico. So that brings us on the board here at 36. I always had planned on trading into the second round today. I always had planned on picking Jaluchonis, so now we have to adjust a little bit. I will say there are some guys who I'm surprised are still on the board. In terms of pre-draft invites, we brought in both Malik Poole and Romero Birkin. Now, part of the allure of Jaluchonis is that we're picking someone who's 7'2". I really wanted to add some more size in the draft, and these guys are both really small. Birkin is 6'2", Poole is 6'1", maybe 6'2". But you're not supposed to draft for need, kids. You're supposed to pick for value. Birkin's the better scorer. I think he's a little more athletic and better defensively. Poole is a little bit more established. He's a little bit older. I think he's a little bit more ready to go, and he's a better playmaker. So with the 36th pick in the 2028 NBA draft, the Golden State Warriors select Romero Birkin from France. We will not make the nepotism move again. Yes, it did work with Jabari Springer, but we're not going to pick Clyde Poole's brother. Instead, it's Romero Birkin, who's a 76. Hello! For a second rounder, that looks pretty good. He was not a guy who was on my radar at all, really, because I felt like his skill set was very similar to that of Antoine Salis. But with him on the board here in the second round, I had to go for the value. This is not a second-round player. This guy belonged in the top 20. Really, really good scorer. He is advanced with how he's able to create his own shot, fading away, off the dribble, off of screens, in transition. I love what this kid offers as a scorer. He's a little bit inefficient from 2, but I like what he has to offer in his overall upside offensively. Not a great playmaker, but he is a good passer in transition. The problem with him is that he is a tweener. He's a 6'2" guard who isn't really a passer. He needs to score to be effective offensively, and when he's not scoring, it's hard for him to really have an impact on the game. There are a lot of middling defensive prospects who enter the NBA, and he is certainly one of them. Usually it's because of either a lack of physical ability or because you just don't have the motor and the heart for it. For Birkin, it's that he's 6'2". It's not that he doesn't try. He's gritty, he's tough, he gives a lot of effort. You can't teach heart. You can't teach hustle. You also can't teach size and wingspan. But there are smaller guards who have been able to make a living off of being pesky defenders. Look at a guy like Jose Alvarado. He's not built to be a good defender in the NBA, but he's found his calling as Grand Theft Alvarado, sneaking up behind you, stealing the ball away. If Romero Birkin can find his niche defensively, then I think he can be a positive on that end of the floor. Jamil Saraif, the 5th player from Kentucky off the board, he goes to the Pistons. Tommy Greenland, 6'8", 225, good size and length. He ends up with the Spurs. San Antonio on the clock again. They pick Lawson Wright, who is also 6'8", 225 pounds. So they're clearly going for the same type of player, the double dip strategy, and they hope one of them will hit. Jack Healy from Xavier. I thought he should have gone in the first round. He ends up with Seattle. Maui Solovea from Hawaii goes to the Pacers. He's a guy I would have certainly looked at with our next second-round pick that we also got from Portland. Dylan Martin to the Pistons. Solid wing, 6'7", 215, can shoot the ball. Claudio Moreno, really good combo guard from Gonzaga. He was projected to go undrafted. I didn't see it at all. I think he absolutely is worthy of getting picked. Cameron DeSaint to the Thunder, a lanky, smaller forward who has some good shooting ability. E.D. Finley from Duke goes to the Mavericks. He looks like he should have played in about 1970. Hada Miller from Duke, back-to-back Blue Devils off the board. He goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Jazz get Jaden Barnett, a 6'7" guard, also from Duke. That's 3 in a row. Malik Poole breaks the streak. He goes to the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix needs some more guys at guard. They did just draft Matthias Franklin earlier, but I think Poole's going to be able to play quite a bit early on. Robert Seasonings from Kansas' rival Missouri goes to the Hornets. The Jayhawk is drafted before the Missouri Tiger. Take that! Andon Thompson goes to the Wizards. The Lakers get Adrian Soto. We're a couple picks away as the Spurs at number 52 get Malik Tariq finally off the board. He was projected to go in the lottery. I always didn't see that with him. I thought he was more of a late first, early second round guy. I think he's really raw, but with his traits, this is a steal to get him in the 50s. And then Keontae Cameron at number 53 to the Raptors. So we're on the board back at number 54. And really at this point in the second round, it's not about drafting for fit. It's not about drafting for need. You're looking for a guy who can contribute. And through the final 10 picks of the draft, there's going to be 2, maybe 3 guys who stick in the league. And we're hoping to get one of them here in this spot. So who will be the final pick for the Warriors today? With the 54th pick in the 2028 NBA draft, the Golden State Warriors select Louis Delmar from Duke University. My thought with this pick is get a guy who has major strengths and major weaknesses and try to really hone in on developing those weaknesses. I think he's one of the 5 best defensive prospects in this draft. He's one of the few guys who can truly say they can guard the 1 through the 5 at a high level. The rest of his game, though, is not very good. He had a disappointing freshman season at Duke, and I think he got bad advice to stay in the draft. I think if he improved his shot over the summer, averaged 10 points a game, 37% from 3 next year, he would have gone in the first round. Well, it works out for us because we steal him at the end of the second. Offensively, he's got a lot of work to do. He's just not there yet. There are some flashes, I think, with him, but we just haven't really seen him be a consistent player really at all in terms of driving to the basket, in terms of shooting, in terms of playmaking. But defensively, he's awesome. He can really protect the rim. He's a really good perimeter defender. Excellent motor. Every possession, this guy is fighting. He's digging for loose balls. Gritty, tough basketball player. 6'9", 190. He's really got to grow into his frame. He's really skinny. Just because he can protect the rim doesn't mean he's going to guard bigs very well because he's just not strong enough to match up with a guy like, say, Nikola Jokic, who's just backing you down. There's nothing he's going to be able to do about that. I think if he adds 30 pounds of strength, though, that could change things. And I believe, given that he's only 19 years old, he could grow a little bit. Get to 6'10", 6'11", be more of a true big man who also has forward-like abilities. I think there's a world where this kid becomes really good. He's a ways away. I don't think he's going to play that much as a rookie. I think he's going to get in there a little bit as a defensive specialist, but I think there's a ceiling with him, and I think he could be quite solid for the 54th pick in the draft. We'll wrap things up quickly now. The Jazz here at number 55 get Lucas Hronski out of Finland. I really wanted to add a big today, but I just felt like there was better value at other spots, and with Kolai Jaluchonis going way earlier than I expected, obviously we could not land our guy. Jesus Colon goes to the Lakers. Good combo guard, can really score the ball, hailing from, I believe, the Bahamas. The Nuggets get Stone Simmons, hometown guy, grew up in Colorado, played at the University of Colorado, now is with the Denver Nuggets. Pretty cool story. Back-to-back picks for OKC. They get Marcus Starks, the 6th player from Kentucky, off the board. That is absurd. That team was remarkably deep. The Thunder on the board again. They get Romeo Knox, 7'3", 230. In terms of size and build, certainly the type of guy I would have wanted to add. He's not a very good rim protector, though, and he's not very light on his feet. But at 7'3", you never know. Maybe there could be something there. Joshua Whitaker from Illinois, another big guy, 7'1", 260. I think he is a good defender inside, but I want someone who can run the floor a little bit, and he just can't really do that. The Raptors get Liam McCauley out of UConn, one of the youngest players in this draft, knockdown three-point shooter. Enzo Hawkins to the Spurs. I think they had like 5 second-round picks. The Lakers get Rami Haper from Oregon, and then Mr. Irrelevant belonging to the Utah Jazz. They get Xavier Mills from Army, 7'1", 260 pounds. So that will wrap up the second round. The highest-rated player in the second round is Romero Birkin. Pretty good pick. I certainly did not expect to land him, but I think he's going to be a fun fit for us. And Antoine Salice is on the last year of his deal going into next year. Birkin has a lot of similarities to Salice. The big difference between them is that Salice is 6'6". He's a lot better inside as a scorer. But if we don't want to pay Salice big money, we now have an easy backup option with Romero Birkin. Or Salice could be used as a trade asset. And then with our other pick, we ended up getting Louis Delmar, 72 overall, but I think he's got a really high ceiling. I've really talked myself into him. He wasn't a guy who was really on my radar coming into the draft, but with his defense, I think you could be looking at a really, really good player in a couple of years who could play a very limited role for us this year as a rookie. Let's go through some of the other winners and losers through the draft. One of the most surprising moves to me was the Wizards getting Scoot Henderson. I like the process of it because, again, I don't think a rookie really changes much for their team. I don't think it was great value, but again, I see why they did it, and they should finally be picking outside the top 5 next year, I would hope. Arvon Jackson to the Sixers. He's going to be fun with Jalen Brunson and maybe Jared McCain. See those Royals, 78 overall. What a pick by the Milwaukee Bucks. Cleveland had a very confusing draft. Jamario Mooney at number 8 feels like a big reach, but I'm curious to see how it all works. Their roster is really strange. Kolai Jaluchonis, what a pick by the Boston Celtics. I thought we were the only team who really had him high on their radar, but clearly not. I think the biggest winners are without a doubt the Hornets. And I'm usually hesitant to give the team who made the big flashy moves a ton of props, but Charlotte won the draft. They had no top 6 picks coming into the day. They ended with 2. And both of those guys I thought were even drafted later than they should have gone. I think the 2 of them are 2 top 4 players in the draft. CeCe Cunningham, number 1 of the Huskies. I'm really curious to see how his career goes, given that he's immediately going to be the guy in Montreal. The Knicks with 5 first-rounders. That's got to be some kind of record. They are going all in on the rebuild. They are embracing the tank. This is probably going to be the worst team in the NBA next year. But I like that they have committed themselves to a direction. The Lakers, of course, with a big move, adding Donovan Mitchell. I think they're going to be a major threat in the Western Conference next year. The Mavericks, I thought, had a great day. They got good value for Trae Young. Marlon Boston at 12. Jamie Velarde at 22. Both of those really, really good value picks, in my opinion, for the Mavs. Marcus Evans to the Nets felt like a surprise, but I think it's a really good pick. I think he's a great fit for what they need. And same with Denver and Malcolm Dumas at number 9. He's a guy who was on my radar at number 20, but clearly never had a chance of getting there. Kobe Cabiner, I like quite a bit for the Rockets. Rakai Stewart and Jack Healy, I thought that was a really good class for Seattle. The Spurs with 5 second-round picks, trying to fill out the back end of the roster a little bit. If 1 or 2 of these guys become solid role players, then this would be a big win for the Spurs. The Suns had a fascinating draft, but as I said earlier, they're clearly going for a theme. They want winners. They want productive ball players. They like the upperclassmen. They drafted 3 of the most established older players in this class, all of whom were either first or second team national All-Americans. The Thunder had 4 second-rounders, along with Isaiah Hamilton. The Blazers with Quinn Sims. I think he could end up being a really good pick. And that brings it back to the Warriors, who I thought had a great day with Ramon Hodge, Romero Birkin, and the other kid, whose name I forgot, Louis Delmar. Took me a second there. But that'll wrap up the episode. Next time around, we will go into free agency. We still have that Clippers-Sixers pick. we're still able to maintain the core of the roster. And the question is, do we go out and make a big move? Antoine Salis could be expendable as a trade asset along with that really good pick next year. Or do we just try to run it back with this group and probably add another big through free agency? That'll wrap up the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.